Hi and welcome to another tutorial on Xamarin. In this tutorial we're going to continue learning some of the basic skills with the C# programming language. In the previous tutorial we looked at using integers and floats, so two different number data types in C#. And in that tutorial we used integers and floats, or we mainly used floats, in a little calculator program. So we asked the user to enter two numbers, and then we added the two numbers together and displayed the result to the user. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to continue on with that, but we're going to allow the user to not only add two numbers together, but to have the option of either adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing numbers. So we can give the user some options, and we can change the flow or the direction of the program. So what that means is we're now working with decisions. So our program will have will be able to make different decisions. Okay, and that's called conditional programming. So where you allow the program to make decisions based on different conditions. So if the user says that they want to add two numbers together, then your program will add the two numbers together. If they say divide, then it will divide numbers. Okay, so what we're going to do first is before we ask the user to enter two numbers, we'll ask the user to select an option. Okay, so what I'll say here is console.writeLine. Okay, and in brackets and quotes we'll say select from one of the following options. Okay, and so what we can do is now give the user some options. So we could say option 1 is add, option 2 is subtract, option 3 multiply, and option 4 divide, and they can enter in one of those numbers, 1, 2, 3, or 4, to select an option. So we can firstly make a new line. So we can have each option on a new line. And to do that, we can say \n, so that creates a new line. All right. Then we can say 1, so option 1, a little dash there is add. Okay. And then new line, so \n. Okay. Notice that the \n's are a different color. Okay, so it's recognized as that's a key sequence to make a new line. Okay, option 2 will be subtract, new line. Option 3 will be multiply. Okay, and another new line. Option 4 will be divide. Okay, and then we can close that quote, the double quotes, close the brackets, and then end that line with a semicolon. Okay, so we're asking the user select from one of the following options. Let's just have a look at what that will look like. Okay, so here we go. Select from one of the following options: add, subtract, multiply, or divide. And the user's got to pick a number. Now they need to be able to enter in a number before they're asked to enter the two numbers. So just close that, and that's the next bit that we need to do. So we'll make a new line here. And just before we ask the user to enter two numbers, we can go and store the option that the user has selected as an integer. So store whether they've entered option 1, 2, 3, or 4. So they're just going to enter a number. Okay, so we can say int to create a variable that will contain an integer, and that variable can be called option, and it can be equal to int.pass, and then console.readLine, open bracket, close bracket, and then close the bracket for the int.pass method. Okay, that's it. So end that line with a semicolon. So now what we're doing, I'll just add some comments here, is ask the user to select an option. So that's the first thing we're doing. Ask them to select a type of calculation. To put that in brackets. Okay, then what we do is store the selected option in a variable as an integer value, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Okay, and then we go and ask the user to enter two numbers. All right, what we might actually do is say, we could say enter two numbers, and I'll just copy that and paste it here. And I'll say enter the first number, and then copy that, and then paste it down here. And we can say enter the second number. So what will happen is it asks the user to select an option. So they're given options. Then that option is stored in this variable called option. Then they get a message saying enter two numbers. All right. Then they're asked to enter the first number. The num1 float variable stores that number. Then the user is asked to enter a second number. That's stored in the float variable called num2. And then at the moment, it's going to just display the result of adding num1 and num2 together, those two numbers. We'll get rid of that, so we can delete that line. And what we'll do is we'll firstly check which option has been selected. So if it's add, we'll add those two numbers together. But if it's subtract, then we need to subtract those numbers, multiply, divide, so on. Okay? And to do that, we can use if statements. So an if statement allows your program to test a condition, all right, and then based on the answer to that condition or based on the answer to a question, you'll get one result or another result. So, for example, and this will be our example here, we can say if option is equal to 1, all right, and if we want to check if something is equal to something, we use two equal signs. A single equal sign means that you're assigning a value to a variable. So for example, num2 will be equal to the value that the user enters in for the second number. But two equal signs in a row means is equal to. So we're actually comparing whether the option that the user has entered is equal to 1. So if it's the same. All right. Now there are other different operators that we can use. So that's called a comparison or conditional operator, but that means is equal to. We could also use greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. Okay, so there's different operators that we can use, but we want to make sure that the user has entered either 1, 2, 3, or 4 as their option. So we'll firstly check if it's option 1. Okay, so if the option is equal to 1, and then we need some brackets here. Okay, what we can then say, I'll just make sure we need to just make sure that we close that bracket off there. There we go. Good, okay. Yeah, just making sure that we've got matching brackets. So when you create an if statement, you say if, then you have the condition inside normal brackets, and then inside these curly brackets or curly braces, we have the result. So what will actually happen if this condition is met or if it evaluates to true. So if the option is actually 1, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to say console.writeLine. We'll display a message. The answer is a space and then end of the string message. And then what we'll do is plus, and then in brackets, num1 plus num2, close those brackets and then close the other brackets, and with a semicolon. So saying the answer is, all right, and this is all inside, this statement is all inside these brackets, but saying the answer is, and then inside these brackets here, we're adding number 1 and number 2 together. So that's addition. All right, so let's test that out. All right, now we've at the moment only specified one option, so we've only specified what will happen if option 1 is selected. We haven't picked the other options yet, so I'll say 1. All right, so we're going to add two numbers together now. Enter the two numbers, enter the first number. First number can be 10, second number can be 5, and we get the answer is 15. So that works. All right, so added the two numbers together. What if we pick option 2 now? Well, let's say option 2 has been stored in the variable called option. Now we can enter the first number, 10, and the second number, 5. And what this should do if we pick option 2 is it should subtract 5 from 10. But it's not going to, because nothing has been specified. We haven't specified what to do when we pick option 2. So nothing happens. We just get an empty line there. Nothing happens. All right. The program basically just ends. All right. So we need to go and specify what will happen if option 2 is selected. And the way we can write that is we can say else if. So if we have an if statement, and we've got a condition here, and we want to add more conditions, then each extra condition we want to add can be added using an else if statement. So we can say else if option is equal to 2. Just create the curly brackets there and then close them. Oops, it just messes up the formatting a little bit. I like my if statements to be on separate lines. So there we go. That's what it should be. That's what it should look like. If you ever get confused with the brackets and you're not sure whether you're missing a bracket or you've got an extra bracket, just click on the first bracket of the statement, so the first curly bracket here, this else if statement, and then make sure that where the closing bracket is, that it's highlighted there. So see, if I click on this one goes orange. Same with the class. So if I click on the class, that's its closing bracket there. And if I click on the namespace, it shows its closing bracket down there. Okay, so if the option is equal to 2, what we're going to do is console.writeLine, and we'll say the answer is, plus, and then in brackets, num1 minus num2, because this is option 2 is subtraction. Close all those brackets and that line with a semicolon, and we can just go and copy this else if statement. So I've selected all of this here, including the curly brackets. I can copy that, so Command C or Control C on Windows. Make some space and just change this one from 2 to 3 and from minus to star or asterisk for multiply. Okay, we can do that again, make a bit more space. We can say for option 4, the answer is, and instead of minus, we change that to divide, which is a /. Okay, so now we've got all 4 options there. So saying if the option selected is 1, then add the 2 numbers together. If it's 2, then subtract. If the option's 3, then multiply. And if the option's 4, then divide. Can save that and then run it. And this time, if we select option 2, we enter 10 as the first number and 5 as the second number. It does 10, take away 5, the answer is 5. So that works. And if we did it for 3 and 4, those would also work. It would multiply or divide, depending on which one you picked. However, there is one problem. And that is, what if the user enters something completely different? So if they enter in option 5 or 6, which don't exist in this program, or they enter in a letter or something completely different. Well, what we can do is we can specify an else statement, which will basically run if none of these other conditions are met. So if option is equal to 1, if that condition's not met, if this condition's not met, and this one's not met, and this one's not met, then we can have something else that will happen in case all of those conditions aren't met. And that's an else statement. Okay, so we've got if, and then we've got a few else if conditions, and then we've got else. All right, and then that will go inside curly brackets. Let's fix that up. And I'll just space these out a bit more. Doesn't matter if they're on different lines or on the same line, but I just like mine to be nicely spaced out in different blocks. Okay, so we can say else console.writeLine. We could say something like option is not recognized. So if we don't recognize the option that they've selected. Okay, and that's it. And that line with the semicolon, save. And now if I go to enter in a random option like option 7, and I enter in 2 numbers, it will say option is not recognized. Okay, that's it. That's a very basic calculator command line program written in C#. But what we've learned to do here is to write a program that can test different conditions, it can ask different questions, and then the program can take different paths or make different decisions based on the conditions that are there. All right, that's all for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we'll extend this program a little bit by separating things into different methods. So we're going to look at methods in the next tutorial. Thanks for watching.